Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
We also had somebody write in about their child who was diagnosed last year at 6, and they said, I need help. Maybe a list of things to do to help her and help myself. I'm at my wit's end. When she has her meltdowns, she hits, she screams, throws things. I don't know what I should do.
Got it. Okay, so so we're just going to give a kind of an overall series of things that you should look into. And the first one obviously is ABA. You need to get in touch with an ABA company wherever you are and get a program going immediately. For us at CARD, 6 is right around the time when we can still get comprehensive programs from payers being your insurance company. And it is very hard to get 40-hour programs approved once the child is older. It's not an exact cutoff. Every insurance company has their own stuff, but I really do recommend that you try to get your funding going. So you contact your health insurance and you say, I would like an ABA program, and they'll tell you what's required. Sometimes some of the payers will require you to get a diagnosis from your physician, or a recommendation or referral or prescription from your physician saying your child needs ABA. Once you get that, you then get connected to an ABA organization. Now get going on this fast because it takes a little while to get started. As I said, you have to do these types of assessments, like ours at CARD is skills. And you will do that assessment so we can identify like what kinds of strengths your child has and what kinds of areas they need help in. Then the ABA organization will get a program going. In the meantime, once you've gotten that started, you can also get together with a physician. Sometimes, depending on if your child has dietary issues, gastrointestinal issues, sleep issues, those are types of things that you want to make sure you deal with early on, because if your child's not sleeping, if your child has a lot of bloating, is uncomfortable, has constipation, all these types of things, you'd be surprised what a significant effect all of that has on your child's ability to learn. So make sure you're dealing with all of that kind of stuff. If you want help figuring out where to find a physician, online, there's an organization called MedMaps, and they have listed physicians all over the country who are kind of trained in a more holistic type of intervention. Many of those folks are kind of naturopaths or homeopaths, but then there's also just Western medicine physicians on there, but they are all looking to boost your child's immune system. They're all working to try to reduce toxins from your child's life. And by that means making your child healthier so that he or she can learn faster. So I think the two main things are make sure your child's biology is sort of stabilized, so the child's healthy and able to learn very fast. And then you look at ABA. Now, if your child has a lot of gastrointestinal inflammation, your physician will tell you that, and then you'll need to also get involved with a dietitian or nutritionist who can help you select the right foods. On the other side, if your child has problems picking up speech, you might need speech therapy as well. And finally, if your child has issues with either gross or fine motor skills or proprioceptive skills, like you might need a little bit of occupational therapy. That's the full array. So we're talking, generally speaking, a lot of people have a very intensive ABA program. They have a physician who can monitor the child. They might have a dietitian or nutritionist, and they might also have speech or occupational therapy. And that's pretty much it, I think, right, Shannon?
Yeah, can we talk for just a second about the hours? Because not only is this, it's come up with this parent's question, but also the parent that was asking about the 12-year-old getting 2 hours a day. She wrote back and she said, he's 12. I thought that at this age, 2 hours a day was a good amount. He's also homeschooled for 2 hours a day. And I think, there's nobody better than you to talk about what can be accomplished in what amount of time.
Yeah. So, I'll go back and say that this will show how old I am. In 1984, we published a paper at UCLA, which was the original paper that changed the world of ABA. And that's really important because that paper was the reason, it's the seminal study still to this day in the field of behavioral medicine. And it has to do with what we did is we were for many years, from like the late 70s to the early 80s, we were kind of working with patients, with individuals who had the diagnosis of autism. And let me tell you, it was pretty severe in some cases because this was before deinstitutionalization. And so we were working with children who had been placed in Camarillo State Hospital, and that was very severe. So what we did was we had a group of children who were able to come to UCLA, right? So they were close enough where we used our students at UCLA and we trained them to do therapy, just like right now ABA organizations train their behavior technicians. And so these students would work with the children. And if you were really close to UCLA, you'd get a lot of hours because these therapists, these students would come to your house. You could also come to UCLA and you'd get tons of therapy. If you were living far from UCLA, you'd get less therapy because we didn't have students who would be able to drive all the way down to, let's say, hours away from UCLA. So naturally, this ended up producing for us two groups of children. And we made sure that the groups are equal in their IQ and their language ability and all of that. And so the children who were closer to UCLA were getting about 40 hours per week of ABA from us. And those who were further out were getting about 10 hours per week of ABA, like the individual who had written in earlier. And these children were all they had all entered the program around the age of 3.5, and they were all aged between 3.5 and 6. Okay. And then there was a third group of children that we also measured, who were kids who were same age, same functioning level, but they were on the other side of UCLA. Was an area called Neuropsychiatric Institute. Now it's called SEML. And they used to do other types of interventions. And those kids were getting 10 hours of other types of interventions. So what we did is, after about 2.5 years, we looked back, and of the group who had received 40 hours per week for 2.5 years, half of those children had attained normal IQ, and they were now in first grade, and they were functioning extremely well alone without an aid in first grade. So for all practical purposes, and as independent psychiatrists removed their diagnosis of autism, half of those kids. So actually, to be accurate, 47%. Of the other two groups who had received 10 hours, only one child made it, and that was 2%. So it was 47% of the ones who received intensive therapy, 2% of the ones who received 10 hours. So that's where it becomes very obvious. That was the first study that pointed to hours, intensity being the key point in ABA. We call it now dosage, right? So if I recommend for your child, let's say 20 milligrams of a medication, but you only give them 2 milligrams, what kind of result are you going to get? Just think of it that way. Are you going to get the result that is expected from that medication? Same thing with ABA. If I recommend 10 hours, 15, 20, 30 hours, and you only give them 2 hours, it's just not going to work. And the more needs the child has, the higher the intensity should be. Now, the problem is, funding for intensive therapy cuts out around the age 6 to 8. A lot of the payers don't really want to fund a child who's, let's say, starting at age 8 for 40 hours. Why? Because from their perspective, it's virtually impossible to teach all the things that you need to teach to an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old. And it's probably pretty close to being accurate, to be honest with you. But it's a different thing when you're working with a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, because you still have enough time to teach all the things you need to change behavior. But that being said, I think another parent had written in that they're doing what's called a focused program. Focused programs can go on forever, even in adulthood, and they are very, very effective. What a focused program is that we're not working on every area. We're working on a focus. We have on a particular area like social skills or language or vocational or severe challenging behaviors. Whatever it is, we're focusing on just that one thing. So I don't know if that's what you meant me to go through, Shannon.
Yeah,
but-
I mean, I always appreciate that, but I also think too that you talked about this a couple of weeks ago in a way that I think lit up a lot of people's brains, and they were like, "Oh, okay, I got it." That somebody was saying, "Well, I need for what I want my child to do. We need to work on toilet training, and we're having tantrums, and we need to build speech, and we're doing 12 hours a week." And you were saying, "I don't have enough hours to get all that done. We're going to have to pick 2 of those things, and it's going to take us 6 months to do this as opposed to 2." And people were like, "What?"
Yeah.
And everybody went like, it takes a certain number of hours to toilet train. It takes a certain number of hours weekly to work on speech. And you kind of went through this thing and said, if I have 40 hours, I can work on it all. If I have 30 hours, I can work on these things. If I have 20 hours, I just like for people to think of it that way. That if I only have 10 hours, I can only accomplish a certain amount. And that might be okay.
And that amount has a lot to do with the child's functioning level as well, which is why it's really hard for us to write a prescription and say every child needs X amount. Because if your child is learning extremely fast, then and I have 40 hours, I might only need that. I mean, I have literally, let's be honest, I have recovered children in 18 months because the child was just a really rapid learner, and we figured out what the child needed in order to be fully attentive and aware and so on and learn fast. Okay. On the other hand, I've also recovered individuals, but it took 10 years. So, it just has to do with how fast the individual is learning and how many things they still need to master. It's really that simple. So you start with the assessments that I mentioned, and you see all the areas that you need to work on. And each of those areas will take some time, and that has to do with your child's ability. And, so when I have a 40-hour program, I could probably focus on about average of about 20 lessons at any given time. But if I have a 10-hour program, I'm probably going to only focus on about 7 or 8 lessons. So that's the issue. And you need to be that your BCBA, your board certified behavior analyst, should be able to help you with that.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.